But as was said before, DUDUS wasn't done. DUDUS was now a believer. He had seen the kind of respect his generosity towards the children of his community had brought him, and upon quickly realizing that this was one of the key routes to the hearts of the masses, he hastily embarked on a mission to go one step further, this time by playing Santa Claus. The birth of West Kingston Jamboree came next, another of DUDUS's innovative, or as some have said, manipulative ventures, which again utilized the medium of entertainment. West Kingston Jamboree was again not an original DUDUS idea, but again he was responsible for its growth. In short, West Kingston Jamboree was a Christmas treat for the children of Tivoli Gardens, but with DUDUS in the driver's seat, he not only redirected the vehicle, but he elevated what once was a small-scale community effort into a Christmas celebration of mega proportions. Efforts of this nature, Christmas streets, were nothing new to the inner-city garrisons of Kingston, but all these events were usually initiatives driven by political motivation, orchestrated by members of parliament or the community councillors. However, with DUDUS around, Tivoli Gardens had no need for such political patronizing, charity or even the consideration for such. They had a president, so even though the political party that they, Tivoli Gardens, supported was on life support, there was no need for the people to experience the same fate. Such was DUDUS's outlook, at least so it seemed, but again a claim that was countered with a rebuttal to the tune of, all he was doing was pulling one over on the people and increasing his power over them and onlookers in the process. The rebuttal continues with arguments such as, "It's no military secret that Western societies have set a precedence that has placed Christmas at the pinnacle of the festive seasons, and it's also common knowledge that it is the desire of all parents to do for their children at this particular time of the year." This is a reality, and another one of equal proportions is, most parents in the garrisons of Jamaica already have a hard time doing for their children on a daily basis. What says at that particular time of the year, when the pressure is increased? This was what it was, still is, in many Jamaican and other neighborhoods worldwide, and Western Kingston was no different, but DUDUS was going to fix the problem. Again enlisting the assistance of those abroad who were more than willing this time around to assist in their, now successful, Don's ventures, especially with him singing a song to the tune of, finally giving the children of the community a good Christmas, and doing so without their help of insignificant handouts from politicians, who never seemed to get it right anyway. This was the pitch, and since the situation was what it was, with no real backing from Mr. Siaga, common knowledge to those in the know at the time, hesitation to join in and assist wasn't even a thought. What was supposed to be a simple Christmas treat improved and devolved into the West Kingston Jamboree, a pre-Christmas event where children of the community received what many children from even more privileged situations were unable to get, a fabulous Christmas. The children of Tivoli Gardens got some of the latest and best gifts being touted for the season, sent in mostly from those abroad, but distributed by DUDUS and his presidential clique. They were on the ground, so naturally the credit was theirs. The contributors abroad, however, could care less. They were just glad to be affiliated with the Don directly, and as some have put it, were relieved to finally be able to act, as if their illegal and brutal acts had some type of higher calling with major purpose behind them. Note: in addition to the previously mentioned help that DUDUS enlisted to make West Kingston Jamboree a reality, what also needs to be noted here, is that in true DUDUS fashion, never missing an opportunity to capitalize, he engaged in an exercise that many have termed gentle extortion. A practice that revolved around reaching out to businesses, in and around the community, for contributions towards the Christmas treat, which was being held in their very own backyard. And with the neighborhood making the request being Tivoli Gardens, contributions came with relative ease, both in cash and kind. In short, DUDUS not only got help from his affiliates to push his agenda, but he also, under the guise of a Christmas treat, along with, and in some cases, a bit of intimidation, got the support of major business entities, who provided most of what was needed on the ground to make this a reality. And with all this combined, once again, DUDUS was a hero. This was West Kingston Jamboree, a Christmas treat like no other for the children of not only Tivoli Gardens, but West Kingston at large. Yet another deliberate move according to some, to extend his physical and mental reach with the generosity of gifts, a move which there was no denying, worked like a charm. Everything was in place for these events, food was abundant, drinks were plentiful. There was an assortment of rides for the children, and they even brought Santa to the ghetto. From the outside looking in, it was hard not to tip your hat at the effort. The children loved it, and the parents became DUDUS loyalists without even realizing it. But what about the adults? He had that in check too. DUDUS saw it as only fair that after the children had a great day, and had gotten the desires of their hearts, it was time for the adults to have some fun themselves. So he added music, more and more each year. He invited affiliates, other dons included, entertainers and even politicians, so they could all see firsthand what he was doing for the community. And with that, West Kingston Jamboree became a Christmas party for the underworld, their affiliates and sympathizers. Show and tell. See video clip on YouTube of the 2009 staging of West Kingston Jamboree, where the JLP, Jamaica Labour Party, Minister of Information, at the time, Darrell Vaz, can be seen on stage, standing in the background of the clip, with arms folded, at 0:26 seconds. Title of clip: Gully Gaza Movado and Vibes Bus Up Kingston in the Name of Peace. Special note. This was December 2009, this was a presidential click production, and DUDUS was already known to be wanted by the US government. Music was an essential part of the setting from the start, and since DUDUS already had easy access to entertainers, who were all in awe of him, it's almost as though there was a rush to grace the president's stage, again. They performed with glee and for free, all under the guise of giving back to the people of Tivoli Gardens and Western Kingston, who had become literal symbols for the downtrodden, who refused to stay down. And just like that, West Kingston Jamboree, a free annual event for both children and adults, with an impressive lineup of Jamaica's best entertainers to top it off, became what it eventually became, another production under the belts of DUDUS and his presidential clique. Who else could have orchestrated such an event, year after year, after year? Progressive evolution. There was a time when partying downtown was a little no-no, but under DUDUS's leadership, all that changed. Tivoli Gardens was a safe zone. Cars were left unlocked and not disturbed, unheard of in any other garrison. No one got robbed and or harassed at these events. One such event was what eventually became the world-famous Passa Passa. A weekly street dance like no other, lasting at times until 7 a.m. in the morning or later, while obstructing traffic with no regard for the law or the rules of civil society. Like it or not, it was what it was. DUDUS had created a mecca, a gangster utopia, but even with this achieved, he still wasn't done. Act 3. Stronger and stronger. Every move DUDUS made after that contributed to his increasing power. He was a maverick. He had the Midas touch. He said money over war and backed it up. Everything he touched turned to gold. And all this without the usual violence that is often associated with Jamaican dons. DUDUS had the best of both worlds. He was feared and respected, and above that, the masses loved him. Almost overnight, DUDUS became a magnet of admiration, and association with him was now suddenly desired by many. One such person, it is said, was local West Kingston businessman, Justin Ogilvy. At the time of DUDUS's rise to power, Ogilvy had been in the business of construction for years, and is said to have even been an associate of DUDUS's late father, Jim Brown. We were unable to actually confirm such claims, but what we did confirm is of equal intrigue. For as long as there has been garrisons in Jamaica, Dons have always had their hands in the construction and development of both community and private projects. That's just the way it was, and still remains so to some extent, even though most of these Dons had no formal training in this vocation, and at the same time, most weren't even legal contractors to begin with. Most in this field were mere laborers, with no real expertise in construction, but still managed to be the ones who ended up being in control of major construction projects, financially and otherwise. In West Kingston, it was no different. And this was the environment, it is said, that Ogilvy had always operated in, and was determined to continue operating in, even while DUDUS rose to prominence. Justin Ogilvy, it is said, was one of the few contractors from the community that was both skilled and legitimate. He was also one of the originals who got along with everyone he needed to get along with, and at the same time, he was no threat. His expertise, along with the influence and force of the Don, who could often secure contracts just by showing up or sending a message, was like a match made in heaven. You scratch my back and I will scratch yours. The Dons needed Ogilvy and he needed them. Ogilvy, like most West Kingston residents and affiliates, had seen DUDUS at work, and was almost certainly an admirer, but Ogilvy was no groupie. He was a businessman, and instantly saw the potential benefit of being a permanent associate. From all accounts, Ogilvy liked DUDUS's fire, but he also knew that it had to be quenched. There were better ways to approach things, and with him being who he was, it wasn't long before he sought audience with the Don. And just like that, upon securing that meeting, Ogilvy walked away a business partner, becoming one of the key pieces in the Tivoli Gardens jigsaw puzzle, and Christopher Coke's power structure. Name of company: Incomparable Enterprise. Type of business: construction. Address: 45 Spanish Town Road, Kingston 14. Note: unlike his father, who was known to be flamboyant, DUDUS was the total opposite. He possessed a very low-key persona and demeanor, very much unlike the Dons of his era, and was said to be more interested in doing big things, opposed to merely being seen as the big thing. Interesting fact: unknown to many, DUDUS was very much into subliminal messages and symbolism. Case in point: the presidential clique, a name which depicted who they thought they were, and the office they felt they apparently held. This is also true for his personal title, the President. And the same was true with the name he chose for the company, jointly owned by himself and Ogilvy. Incomparable Enterprise. All names cloaked in blatant subliminal efforts of symbolism. Incomparable Enterprise was a fruitful partnership from the start. Ogilvy had the skills and the tools, and DUDUS had the manpower and the influence, aka the intimidating or convincing factor. The Tivoli Gardens factor got Incomparable Enterprise many of its early contracts, but as good as that may have been, it simply wasn't enough, not for DUDUS, who always had his sights set on more lofty undertakings. Independent contracts were good, but DUDUS had heard and learned if better. Government contracts were the way to go, but with their political allegiance out of power, there was a roadblock in obtaining such lucrative agreements. All the contracts, it seemed, were going to the PNP, People's National Party, affiliated contractors. And with this perception, DUDUS embarked on what could have been deemed a novel quest at the time, getting the JLP, Jamaica Labour Party, back in power. According to almost all accounts, this was DUDUS's perception, ultimate solution and eventful aim. If he was in it, he was going to win it, and for him to win like he was convinced he could, He had to have his people, or at least the people he was aligned to politically, in positions of power. Politics became a major issue. Prior to this realization and eventual quest, DUDUS's interest in politics was minimal, but this new realization changed all that dramatically, and this was regardless of the hurdle by the name of Edward Philip George Seaga, which he was yet to clear. The Jamaica Labour Party may not have been in power for years, but Mr. Seaga was still the leader of the embattled party, even though many say, and evidence also suggests, that the Jamaican electorate were not interested in re-electing him as leader of their country. Evidence. The Jamaican populace, at the time, made their feelings known, election after election since 1989, by the continued choosing of the PNP, People's National Party, even after constant missteps, simply because, like many Jamaicans say, they were the lesser of two evils, at that particular moment in time. With DUDUS and Mr. Seaga at odds for years, and the political climate in Jamaica being what it was at the time, instead of trying to mend an old broken fence, DUDUS, now aware of the importance of political power and backing, was soon forming new alliances within the ranks of the Jamaica Labour Party. A development that created a windfall of changes that eventually led to Mr. Seaga resigning from the party and its leadership position, turning over the reins to the Honourable Oet Bruce Golding, Jamaica's Prime Minister, from September the 11th, 2007 to October 23, 2011. Special note. In the ranks of the JLP, Jamaica Labour Party, Tivoli Gardens was a dedicated stronghold where the votes were guaranteed. It was a reality said to be the envy and desire of all political representatives. And in the realm of dons, DUDUS was also DUDUS, somewhat of a necessary evil of sorts himself. A necessary evil which was said to have been envied and desired by most political representatives, his ill repute making very little difference whatsoever. It is said that soon after the previously mentioned realization, DUDUS embarked on a campaign for ultimate takeover of his new goal, the Jamaica Labour Party, JLP. An effort which, it is said, included a successful effort to demonize Mr. Seaga amongst his peers, planting seeds that went to the tune of, for the JLP to ever win a general election again, they could not do so with Mr. Seaga at the head of the party. A suggestion that wasn't too far-fetched from reality, if the track record of constant electorate defeats that spanned over a decade at the time, were taken into consideration. This, it is said, was the crux of DUDUS's campaign of demonization, a realistic and almost undeniable assessment, which also came with the stroking of the egotistical desires for leadership, which resides in all politicians, who from a point of analytical retrospect, bought into what he was selling with relative ease. They all longed for the taste of power. Note. Prior to the JLP's 2007 victory at the polls, their last general election victory was way back in 1983. We have all heard the saying, if you can't beat them, then you join them, but DUDUS had an interesting twist to this familiar adage. With him it was, if they don't want to join you, destroy them, especially since they already can't beat you. And that, according to some accounts, is exactly what he, DUDUS, did to Mr. Seaga politically, by forming alliances with other party members who saw his outlook as the way forward. And with that achieved, soon the theory, according to DUDUS, was being heralded as a great philosophical moment of enlightenment. The depth of his influence may never really be known, but accusations have circulated that DUDUS was instrumental in the JLP's resurgence as victors at the polls in 2007, and from all indications, it would appear that these accusations and assumptions do hold some weight, because according to the streets, it was DUDUS who was responsible for the reshuffling of the party's cabinet, and had a heavy hand in the JLP's, Jamaica Labour Party, victory at the polls in 2007, over the PNP, People's National Party, led by then incumbent, Honourable Portia Simpson Miller. The general consensus among many Jamaicans at the time was that DUDUS had influenced key players in the party by simply showing them what they already knew. The Jamaican electorate was fed up with Mr. Seaga, and if they, the JLP, were to win another general election, they needed to reshuffle the cabinet and get rid of Mr. Seaga in the process. At one time, such a suggestion would have been almost blasphemous. This was Mr. Seaga. He had been there from day one, from the days of Bustamante, and here it was, the very Don from his own constituency, suggesting that they get rid of him to move forward. This was preposterous. However, it made all the sense in the world, especially since it was being whispered that most were already not seeing eye to eye with the aging leader. They had their own agendas, own aspirations, the likes of which were not being realized, simply because they were in the position of opposition. DUDUS was making sense. His plot was simple: get rid of him, Mr. Seaga, and I will give you the desires of your hearts, not the people per se, but their votes, and not just the votes and people of Tivoli Gardens or West Kingston either, but he was offering constituencies that weren't even on the JLP's radar. And if that wasn't enough, there was also talk of re-energizing constituencies that had lost the dedicated political luster, which they were once known to possess. But how could he do any of this if those in the respective political positions were unable to? The answer was simple. DUDUS hit the streets. He wasn't just a Don, he was the president, the man who was the man, even above all the other Dons, from their individual communities, combined. In the streets, he called the shots. It was that simple. So his proposal wasn't some pipe dream. If he said it, he more than likely could deliver it. That was his reputation, and everybody knew it, accepted it and believed in it. DUDUS could influence what went on in zones he was not even familiar with physically. That was no military secret, common knowledge in the streets. Then to top all that, DUDUS also had the admiration and minds of the common man from all over Jamaica. Everyone had heard of his exploits. He was both feared and revered. Tivoli Gardens, the mother of all garrisons, had crowned him king, and in the streets, he was Your Highness. Somewhere on his way to the throne, DUDUS became a literal symbol of hope for almost every inner city youth. A victor over a system designed to keep them submerged. By 2002, Tivoli Gardens was the envy for all garrisons. According to many reports, it was rent-free. There were no utility bills. Your children were provided for. You did as you pretty much pleased. There was always something to do, and violence and security were no longer issues of concern. The regular burdens of society were removed, and almost everyone, from every other garrison, near and far, wanted a piece of the pie, and since DUDUS was selling, just like the politicians, all his admirers soon became eager consumers. DUDUS offered himself, his power, his influence. And from all indicators, it was bought, lock, stock and barrel, by almost everyone privileged enough to get such a coveted offer. Show and tell. DUDUS was selling and almost everybody was buying, but the proof is always in the pudding. The first taste of what he had in the oven is said to have come during the local government elections of 2003, when it is alleged that his backing led to a landslide victory for the JLP, Jamaica Labour Party, convincing everyone, from the politician to the technician, and from preacher to the teacher, that he wasn't all bark and no bite. Local government election in Jamaica is just what the title suggests. An election that focuses on putting candidates in place to oversee the portfolio of local duties, for example, road repairs, social services, etc. In other words, the JLP was finally in the position to facilitate the desires of DUDUS's heart. They could now issue the types of contracts that he was yearning to get his hands on. That's all this was about for him. Nothing more, nothing less. For him to win, even more than he already was, the JLP, had to win. Tipping the election. It is said that DUDUS and his cronies set out on a deliberate mission, aimed at tipping the 2003 local government elections in the JLP's favor. Call it a sign of goodwill, or a clear indicator that his proposal wasn't just all talk, but whatever it was, it worked, resulting in the kind of results that mattered and the kind of results that they, the politicians, all understood with clarity. This was achieved, the tipping of the election, mostly by voter intimidation, sporadic acts of violence, and the age-old formula of persuading the desperate with a few dollars to purchase votes. It is also believed that this was a personal financial investment on DUDUS's part, using his own money in this colossal effort. One which it is said, the Jamaica Labour Party, much like the people of West Kingston, was forever indebted for. The votes were in. The JLP may not have been in charge of the country at this time, but they were in charge of enough, at least the enough that mattered to DUDUS at the time, who is said to have also made another key move around this time, that solidified his grip on power even more. If the rumors are correct, then DUDUS was playing chess not checkers, instrumental, it has been rumored, in getting the then Mayor of Kingston and Street, Andrew Desmond Mackenzie, elected to office. An allegation, if true, could explain the grip and control maintained on the downtown region of the city, specifically by residents of Western Kingston, after that particular development. Facts. Prior to his election as mayor, Desmond Mackenzie, a resident of Western Kingston, was a councillor for the community of Denham Town from 1977 to 1984, and councillor of Tivoli Gardens from 1990, eventually rising to the rank of junior spokesman of the opposition in the Senate, 2002 to 2003. With DUDUS's part of the deal upheld, it was time for payback, and according to local published reports, this came in hefty governmental sanctions.